Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Akhilesh Suman and you are watching Indian Standard Time. As you know, Indian Standard Time is an interaction on global affairs, and I have very eminent guest today, a very senior diplomat, one of the most senior diplomats in the world, Walter J. Lindner, who is also Ambassador of Germany in India. Welcome, Ambassador.
अखिलेश जी आपसी कैसी है?
I am fine, Ambassador. बहुत अच्छा हूँ. But the way world is facing a particular situation, sir, as if an unknown enemy has waged a war against the world, and it seems that there is a need of basic reconstruction in the world and massive reconstruction in the world. So, how do you see the challenges of reconstruction, and what might be the factors of reconstruction in the world in post-COVID period?
Well, I would always be careful to use the word war. We're not in a war against the virus. We have a challenge here with the virus globally, and this is the first time we have this global pandemic. And maybe in future we will have more of them, but I mean, maybe that's one of the challenges we have to face in future. I think every country in the world has been affected, some more, some less, of course. And some are still fighting with the first wave, like India, and others are already in the second wave. So we learn every day how to deal with it. Now, what happens in post-COVID times, of course, it's a lot of speculation because we have to see, is there a second wave coming in countries? Is there a third wave? What is the winter influencing? Is cold weather? People go inside. Is this influencing? Was the monsoon a factor or something? Now, all this has to be seen, and we don't see the end of the light on the tunnel yet. It might be that we rather have to live with the virus for quite some more months or a year or so. Now, what impact this has on the economy is also not yet clear. Some economies are already sort of recovering, others are still in the process, and it all depends on the development of the virus, of course. So that's what I'm saying. One thing is, it's yet a speculation what we do. Second, some things can already be seen because in every country, the virus also has sort of put away a blanket and let us see the shortcomings in a country, like health systems, social security systems,
Right.
The phenomenon of migrant workers, and how to deal with them. And so we have quite a lot of issues which are sort of somewhat similar in other countries, somewhat different from country to country, and every country has to deal with these challenges. But I think the first step is to see how is the development going. Second is what can be done already now to prevent this from being as bad when it comes out the next time. So this is something we as I say, you can't give an answer for every country. Every country has to see itself, but all of us, we have to, I guess, see now how dependent we are from supply chains, how we need the discipline of the population, that they trust us as a government when we propose some measures, that they have to trust the governments, and some kind of efficiency in the administration. So there are quite things already which we have seen and which all draw our lessons from it.
You know that international trade also seems to be impacted a lot because of lack of rather migration or even lack of travel from one country to another country, and even within the country, travel is becoming very difficult. And the COVID protocol also says that you have to keep a safe distance from every person. So in that situation, how do you see the challenges of trade and manufacturing, especially in the world?
Well, as I said, we have seen through the COVID pandemic how dependent we are. Maybe too dependent sometimes from just one country or from one source of goods. So we have to see how we can spread our supply chains, make them more, broader, and not only in the context of the medicine, but other things as well. Because if we have no air transport, no cargo transport, and these kind of things, then we are stuck. So that's why we have to see what we can do to produce close by, but also to have a broader selection of countries where we can get the productions. Now, on what you said with the distancing and these things, this the production processes as such, when you have more automatization in the future, where there's just more robots, artificial intelligence, this will limit, of course, the interaction of people. But I don't want to live in a world where we don't have this interaction. This is what we all need, and I think many of us have seen in this process that home office and digital platforms like this one, they are wonderful tools, but if we don't have the real feel, what the people, what's their body movement, what's their interaction as a human being, then we miss so much. That's what makes us humans and not machines. So that's why I'm hoping that once this is over, we take the good aspects of the IT and of these platforms, but we come back also to ordinary offices and to ordinary way of communications where we can touch people.
But we have been seeing that, the global supply chain has been particularly concentrated in one country. And in post-COVID period, we are realizing that the concentration of the whole supply chain might also be diversified. So how do you see the potential of diversification, or you can say that, multiple supply chains in the world? How do you see the prospect in post-COVID period?
Well, as I said, I underline and I subscribe everything you've said. This multi-dimensional sources of our supplies, it's important. We have to diversify it. If we are depending on one country and something is happening there, you got stuck. Like we saw this, we needed supply from certain countries and it was stopped. Then the whole production process is stopped in many countries. These days, let's take a German car. They might be produced in Chennai, but they need spare parts from around the globe, maybe from 20 countries, from Brazil, from Russia, from Europe, from other countries. Now, if this is interrupted, no car will be produced in Chennai, and the people who work in Chennai will lose their jobs. So this is why every country now is depending on a free flow of goods and of free supply chains. That's why it's more important. It's important to diversify and to keep the supply chains open and the free trade open.
Sir, you have recently, your country, your Foreign Affairs Ministry has come out with a new policy guidelines that is called Indo-Pacific guidelines. So what necessitated such a guideline when the world is going through the pandemic period?
Well, it has no direct connection to the pandemic because it was something which was already getting riper and riper in our foreign ministry. We have guidelines and strategy papers for our relationship between Germany and Latin America, Germany and Africa, and some Middle East areas, but we didn't have really one focusing on the Indo-Pacific area. And the Indo-Pacific, in the past 5-10 years, has been growing and growing in its economic importance and political importance. Half of the world population resides there. More than half of the mega cities with more than 10 million people, inhabitants, are there. World economic powers like the first number 3, which is US, then China, then Japan, 4 would be Germany. They are all in the area, and important supply chains and channels, sea transport channels go through the area. So this is in our interest to keep an eye on this area, and it grew more and more important. So it was just time to come up with such a strategy. COVID has helped because it has made it clear how dependent we are from a free flow of goods. So this has maybe sped up the process of it.
In the policy guideline, that is Indo-Pacific policy guidelines, you also say that there should be a partnership among the Indo-Pacific democratic countries. So do you mean that there are some undemocratic countries also in the region and you want to, keep distance from those countries?
If we could create our world like we wanted, and just countries where you have same system as we have, democracy, freedom of press, human rights respect, and kind of, then we would be very alone, because there are a number of countries in this globe which have a authoritarian regime, no democracy. So it is not excluding countries, but of course we have our values. So I'm not saying we are targeting with this strategy now on North Korea. No, we certainly won't. But there are countries with different systems, and let's call a spade a spade. China has a different system. They are a competitor and a rival in the system, in a political system. But we still do trade. It's a big trading partner, and so does India. We have different systems and different countries around this area, and this is addressing all the countries. But of course, we have a special inclination to those countries who share our values and our principles and our democratic and federal structures, like India does. So that's why some countries are maybe getting closer to us, but as a whole, it focuses the whole area, and to see how we can diversify our contacts and cooperation with all these countries.
So how does India figure in this partnership of democracy in Indo-Pacific, and how do you want to take India along with you in your goal that your foreign policy speaks about?
Well, we have very good relations with India. It's a strategic partner, and we have long-standing, close relationship and visits from both sides. For us, India is a very important partner in world politics also, because it aspires to come into the Security Council, like we do. We share our opinion that the Security Council is not representative enough. India should be there. We are working together in the G20. We are close trading partners. And without India, because of its sheer size and the size of its population, without India, no challenge of mankind, of global politics, like global warming, use of plastic, the scarce resource of water, fight against terrorism, desertification, you name it. We need India in all these solutions, because without India, a huge part of the world population would not be there. Every fifth person who walks this planet is Indian.
India also has its own Indo-Pacific understanding, and Indo-Pacific, you can say that Indo-Pacific strategy. So can we think that India's and Germans' Indo-Pacific strategies are complementary and supplementary to each other, or how do you see it?
Yes, I think we have, of course, you are 10 times more, 20 times more population than we do. We live in different areas. We are not a neighbor in the area, while you have already all these neighbors around you, and you have your policy of good neighborhood with your surrounding countries. But in principle, we have a lot of common convictions, like multilateralism. We rely much on multilateralism, on the respect of rule of law, of rule-based societies, rule-based international order, of federalistic orders, of values within a society. So we have a lot of common approaches towards how to deal with international politics and also with surrounding politics. So that's why I think we are in many aspects, I guess we could subscribe to the Indian strategic plans and vice versa, because it's reason, and both countries, both mentalities, Indians and Germans, are sort of no-nonsense people. We have our opinions, and we have our seriousness, and we don't want to beat around the bush, and so that's why we have a great cooperation, because each other knows what the other side says is reliable.
You also hold the presidency of European Union, sir, and this Indo-Pacific guidelines that has been announced by German Foreign Ministry Do you share the same sort of understanding with other members of European Union, or it's a standalone policy of Germany itself?
No, you see, European Union, I mean, we are based within the European Union. They were there when we were just broken after the Second World War, and they helped us through European Union to be again a player in a bigger regional context. So European Union is in our DNA, and you know our partners France, but also the other countries around us. Without the European Union, I think Germany, even with its economic power, would have no real voice in this world. With the European Union, I think we are much stronger, and we are not just an economic bloc. We are we have common convictions based on, you know, French Revolution and German philosophers and Greek philosophers, and you know, so there are a lot of things which we have as common heritage, and this makes me feel at home in every European country,
Right.
of course. Now, of course, we have different. Some countries have some special interest in one country and one in other countries, but all in all, I think we have similar approaches to the regions of the world. So that's why the French have already one of this also a strategy for the region, and we will take it up with the French and maybe a few others to bring this up in the European Union and see if maybe we can have even a common European approach to the region. But we will see. This will have to be discussed in Brussels.
Recently, Germany, France, and Britain, they went to UN with a resolution about South China Sea. So, what is that resolution about, and how far you want to push it forward?
Well, you know, not only the three countries, but all those who are members of the alliance of multilateralism and of rule-based international order, we are of the conviction that the rule of law is the most important thing, and not the law of the strength. So the law of the strength is not the one which is should dominate, but the strength of the law. So wherever we are, we you know, be it in the South Chinese Sea or somewhere else, if there is one particular state or country who thinks because they have a hegemonial situation there,
Right.
they should dictate the rules, then we would say no. The rules are done by international bodies, and we all have to stick to them, and that's what we underline. This is what we also brought, as these three countries you mentioned, brought up there, but we will do it also wherever it's necessary in the world.
Right, but seeing the whole situation, sir, United Nations is also in question because, you know, permanent member of Security Council are also seemingly, or you know, indirect way, they are also responsible for such situations prevailing in the world. So now, when United Nations General Assembly is going to be held soon, so how do you think that India, Germany, and many other countries should come forward for some sort of reform in United Nations Security Council? And do you think that in post-COVID world, such a reform will be very necessary?
Well, you see, India and us, but also the great majority in the General Assembly is convinced that the UN has to be reformed. We just have one UN. If we wouldn't have the United Nations, we would have to reinvent it because it's a wonderful institution. It's the only one we have. If we want to criticize it, we should do it from within, and we should reform it. So reform is necessary, and especially foremost, it's the Security Council, because Security Council it's not representing the reality of today. It's representing the reality of 48, where you had 60 countries, no African countries, no Latin American country, no India. I mean, this is not acceptable. So that's why, with a few other countries like Brazil and Japan and India, we already since more than 15 years have founded a group, G4, which is trying very hard to reform first the membership and then the working methods of the Security Council. It meets always resistance by countries who don't want to reform it, but we are inching forward. But you know, in the I don't know 20th year or 15th year we are there. every year we have to sit together and see, okay, what are the new ways we can push this forward. India is always on our side, and I think above all, India has to be there, African countries have to be there, Latin American countries have to be there. Otherwise, the justification or the respect of people out there in the world is diminishing because they see, well, there are people sitting there, why do they, are they sitting there since 60 years and we not? So we have to justify this better and to make it broader. And in this, I think we are very, very strong allies with India.
But it seems that reform of United Nations Security Council has become hostage of wishes and fancies of one particular country who is also member of the Security Council. So how do you see that India and Germany and other countries can break this barrier?
Well, by trying to convince the majority, the broad majority of the of the General Assembly, because maybe we can get some vote, a two-third majority vote to change it. But this is a discussion done in New York, and I've been myself 20 years ago in New York, 3 years in this committee to reform it, and I must say only very little baby steps have been achieved since then. We try now, at the moment we are in the Security Council, we try to open it up to invite people to briefings beforehand and afterwards, so the working methods already. But the membership, this has to be decided by, of course, many countries, and the P5, the permanent representative member countries, they have to agree to this. And maybe it's not only one country who says no, maybe there are at least two or so. But we will have to see, and it's it's like in a place you get access into a place, and then before you get access you say, I don't want to have these gatekeepers. Once you're in there, you think, oh yeah, I'm happy that there are gatekeepers, so there are not many more people coming. It's a difficult discussion in New York, and believe you me, hundreds of diplomats are working on this, and we're not giving up, because if we give up, the importance and the relevance of the United Nations will be diminished, and this is to the damage of everyone in the world. So I think in reforming the Security Council, we do a huge favor of serving the interests of the United Nations as such.
My last question, sir. There has been some sort of realignment in the Middle East. Many countries of the Gulf are, creating diplomatic relations with Israel. So how do you see this recent phenomenon? Do you think that this will help, reduce the tension in the Middle East and solve the problems that is existing there? I want some crisp answer.
Well, if we start to discuss Middle East, I think we need another 2 hours, because this is more and more, I've been foreign secretary before I came to India. This is one of the most complex topics, and it's revolving and it's coming back, some aspects. But to the more concrete question, I think the more countries recognize the right for existence of Israel in the Arabic world, the better. Because, it's high time that many countries accept Israel as a fact and in the Arab world, and that is a partner to deal with and to trade with. So I think this is good news. I'm happy about it, but I want to really restrict it to this, because otherwise there is no end for the discussion. But we can have another of these interviews just talking on that topic, but maybe not today. It would be too long.
Thank you so much, Excellency, for talking to Rajya Sabha Television. Thank you so much.